I don't
I
know.
think
Don't
we
don't.
want to debate.
Allegedly,
Allegedly,
allegedly.
we are the winners of, let's see, a debate called Jubilee Middle Ground Trans Conservatives versus Trans Liberals. Just, you know.
No, I don't think so. Dream on, dream on. I had foot surgery about 3 weeks ago, so I've been recovering from that ever since. On top of that, I came down with a cold too, so that made things a little more challenging. But I'm getting better now, and if you'd like to know more about the foot surgery that I had recently and my recovery process with that, I can definitely elaborate on that more and talk about it more with you. So, we're going to react to this episode, and the three liberal panelists that we have on this particular episode is Blossom. How could we forget Blossom? Alexander, remember him? And Shane. They're basically going after Blaire the whole time. I've wanted to react to this episode for quite a while now, but I'm just now getting around to it because of, the surgery and getting sick. But we're going to do this, so let's get into it.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that, Blossom. What happened this weekend?
Yeah, I think history was kind of made a little bit. We brought over our community that usually doesn't support that platform or usually doesn't watch that platform because they wanted to see trans and non-binary people actually being able to face off with each other about the issues that affects us and being able to do it in a way where we all have differences of opinion and just different political views and all of the things. And I believe, like, as a trans activist, um it could be a little minute because there's a level of complicitness in our community where we feel like we have to hold these type of issues in within ourselves because we don't want to ruin the trans experience. We don't want to ruin the trans movement. But we were the ones that broke through that. And the amount of cis people who tuned in to watch trans and non binary issues. This morning, when I looked at the YouTube video at the 21st hour, it had over 447,000 views, literally within the first 24 hours. We are breaking history here. It was one of the most intense, controversial conversations, but we're doing it.
Yes, I agree with Blossom on that. That was a pretty intense debate, and a lot of people tuned into it. However, I no longer use the word cis because I learned that a lot of people who are biologically male or female do not like to be called cis. So I no longer refer to them as such. And if you want equal respect from someone or common decency, you have to give that respect back in return to them. You can't just call someone something and expect them to go along with it. However, if the situation is reverse, you don't want anyone calling you by a pronoun, for instance, that you do not identify with related to that particular gender, or even referring to you by your old name. The term dead name, I no longer use that anymore either because when I transitioned, I did not die. Yes, I legally changed my name, but I didn't die. I'm still the same person in a lot of ways. So, cis and dead name are no longer a part of my vocabulary.
There's a few things that I want to address about this whole situation, but one thing I wanted, to make sure that people really understand is, as you're watching, this Jubilee episode, or Middle Ground episode, there's some history actually between Blair and I.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
So Blair actually, in the past, um, essentially reposted one of my posts that I created. It was an educational post, and bullied me, and then blocked me. Oops, sorry. Bullied me, and then blocked me. And then, I I didn't even know who she was until months later when somebody told me that she'd done this. But I realized then I was like, "Oh, no wonder I had all these hundreds of, like, hate comments come in all of a sudden." And it happens every once in a while, and, like, usually when that happens, I'm like, "Where is it posted? Who reposted something?" Some far right media something or someone posted something. So in this case, it might have been one of those times, might have been her. So there was history there, and when, uh, I got there to the studio, I didn't know I don't think many of us didn't really know who was gonna be on the
Mhm.
actual episode.
Yeah, I agree.
So I didn't know Blair was gonna be there, but I heard her voice, and the reason I heard her voice is because I heard her say, "I'm not here to change my mind about anything." And I was like, "Oh my god, it's Blair." And I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be much more challenging than I thought." Because to be honest, like, who wants to sit there in front of bullies? In front of any bully? Like, I don't wanna entertain any bully, and I feel like by being there, I was entertaining this. And this is behavior that I just don't generally entertain.
Mhm.
And then it made me look like a bully because of all the context that was missing against Blair. But in reality, she has been the bully this entire time. And, there's a difference between her and I. Is that the content that I create because I'm a content creator, and you can follow me on Instagram at Alexander.tries,
Sure.
Alexander.tries. Follow me. Um, but so we're both content creators, but the difference is that I don't need to put other people down to get my point across. Her brand is to be this person, is to be a mean girl. She calls herself everybody's favorite controversial trans woman or whatever it is that she calls herself. Fine. I think we can actually coexist in this world, but she needs to be more aware of the harm that she's causing to people that she doesn't know anything about. Some would call that terrorism. I'm just saying.
So not even 3 minutes into their video, they go right into talking about Blair and tearing her down, calling her a bully. I don't think that Blair's content is bullying anyone or causing harm to anyone. If anything, I think it's helping people because she does advocate for kids not medically transitioning or being indoctrinated in ideology or LGBT ideology. I don't think that's causing harm to anyone. And also, because she questioned a non binary person being included in a trans debate, had I been on that panel, I probably wouldn't have. In fact, I know I wouldn't have said anything, but the thought would have crossed my mind for sure. And being non binary and being trans are different, they're not the same. Maybe there might be some similarities, but overall, it's different. You're not trans. Non binary is not trans because when someone is trans, they transition to the opposite gender. If anything, non binary would be semi trans, maybe, but it's not trans. You're not transgender if you're non binary. I think in Blair's reaction, she mentioned that she did not block Alexander. I could be wrong on that. I don't recall. Everyone there was bullying Blair for the most part. The liberals were. With those three, Alex, especially Blossom, and Shane being the ones who were bullying her the most. So now we're up to Shane, Mr. Cool. Can anyone tell me why he's wearing sunglasses like he's Mr. Cool? I don't know.
Came in that space and made us it was so combative. It didn't feel like that we were actually trying to come to a middle ground, which
Mhm.
I was visibly, upset in the video for, the blatant comments that were made that were especially towards the two of you. It was to hear someone that has a platform that really does influence folks. And then I was just watching all the faces of the people that I had helped throughout my career working in some nonprofit work and remembering a trans veteran who would have to take off their makeup when I would take them home at night because they stayed at a VA shelter and they were afraid that they would get beaten up. But it was just all those folks' faces just flashing through my eyes as she was saying all this rhetoric that she doesn't quite understand the impact of her language and how it actually affects the system as a whole. And that was really hard to kind of be in that space. And a lot of the context and a lot of things were kind of cut off because the way that she was operating in the space, the director, I think for the first time ever, had to make rules,
Yeah.
which
Mhm.
was really interesting to me because somehow, some way the narrative has been flipped that, we attacked her or we
Yeah.
did this, we did that, but none of her actions are really being held accountable, at least on her behalf. I mean, maybe should I not have said, "What do you do for the community?" Maybe. I mean, that obviously hit a
No, you
trigger
did the
for her.
right thing. I
But
think
for me, when I
mhm.
was hearing what she was saying about pulling people out of the military and then she wasn't offering resources or speaking for detransitioners, I was actually trying to empathize for detransitioners in that space. I was thinking, well, what are the numbers so that we can create resources for these folks? Because I'm putting on my, my nonprofit kind of activism, oh my God, people need help hat. And I'm seeing, okay, well, if there's a detransitioner issue, we need to create resources for that.
Yeah.
And I see somebody who has a platform who is really speaking for these folks, and that's not really platforming these folks and actually creating real resources. Because if I can kind of see how detransitioners feel like they're, in a rock and a hard place when it comes to our community because they don't quite fit in. They feel isolated from the trans community. They're not being accepted by the cis community. So there's that gap there. And I was trying to have a discussion on how we can support that gap. I didn't really mean to trigger her. I don't really know exactly why it triggered her so much just to ask her a simple question of, hey, do you have 100 people you've worked with? Because I was trying to, again, find the numbers and what she was speaking on, but she kept speaking in such general terms. I felt like I was just chasing, from one subject to the next. And as soon as we'd land to a point, it would go to another point or it would turn
Yeah.
into some catty thing. And it was just really unfortunate to see somebody because part of me again was excited to debate her. The way she portrays herself online was somebody that could really handle a debate, and I don't
Yeah.
know if she handled that debate in a way that even made her points come across the way that I think she wanted to. And she even said online already she was so triggered by my comment that she couldn't handle the rest of the debate, which it's like I'm asking for deliverables on what you're actually doing. I don't think that's anything that should be wrong or should not be questioned. I mean, if you were to ask what I did, I have no problem saying I did this, that, and the other. And even if someone were to disagree with me, it wouldn't trigger me because I'm fully aware of the work that I've done. It doesn't, rock me to that way.
What Shane is saying about Blair, she was not against trans people serving in the military, but her main focus was safety, the safety of the country and the safety of other military personnel over being trans. But she wasn't against trans people serving in the military. She was saying that trans people should be allowed to serve in the military. However, maybe certain roles they should not serve in or they should be prohibited from serving in. And that's understandable. If it's putting the country or other military personnel at risk, then I put that above everything, really, because at the end of the day, the military is our first line of defense in this country. And if the military is weakened, then what do you have to protect yourself against what's out there? The United States prides itself on having one of the strongest militaries in the world. And to have that be jeopardized by being politically correct and trying to be inclusive to everyone, even though it's going to be detrimental to the greater populace, that's wrong. That isn't right. Just to satisfy a minority group, such a small group, so that they're not upset. It doesn't work that way. It's always should be directed towards the greater good. And him asking her what she's done for the trans community, what resources has she provided? Blaire has a large following on YouTube. She has over 1 million subscribers, and over the years, over the last decade, excuse me, her words were that she's dedicated her life to helping other trans people and speaking for the trans community in a positive light. However, these activists that we have out here now, a lot of them, what they're doing is actually detrimental to the trans community. They're the ones who are going out and just making us look bad and turning people against us, trans people, for their actions, for their own selfish reasons. And Blaire's not out there doing that. She has her channel. She's met with detransitioners, these crazy TikToks. She's reacted to them because people will see these TikToks or they'll see different things in the news or online and think that all trans people think this way. That's why we should deny them of their rights. That's why we should not allow them in certain spaces because they're all this way, like this crazy person online referring to themselves as an inanimate object or just being disgusting. Like I said, I don't agree with Blaire on everything. There are things that I think she could do better, but for the most part, overall, you can't say that she's done nothing for trans people and that she's been detrimental to the trans community, if you want to refer to it as a community. You know, this reminds me a lot of Donald Trump. The Democrats, it's the Democrats that are doing this. And I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, so I can speak on this without any real bias. You have Donald Trump. He's not your typical politician. I'm not saying that he's a great man, but the fact that he's not your typical politician, he doesn't need corporations as much as these other politicians do to fund their campaigns and their agendas. He doesn't need that. And he calls out both sides, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whether you're a left-wing news media outlet or a right-wing one. The corporations, the powers that be, whoever they may be, you know who you are, they don't want that. They want a politician, a normal politician in office that they can control, whether they're Democrat or Republican. If Donald Trump hadn't decided to run again in 2024, this probably would not be happening, but they see him as a threat and they have to get rid of him as a threat. And that's kind of what they're doing to Blaire, the liberals. She's one of the loudest voices in the trans community right now, and they're going after her, trying to silence her and trying to smear her name. Why? Because she isn't promoting their agenda. If she was conservative, but she didn't have as large of a following as she does, they wouldn't see her as a threat. They would not be talking to her or talking about her in this way. But Blaire White, Donald Trump, people like that, they're threats to the establishment. I'm not saying that Trump is great. I'm not saying that Blaire is perfect, but the Democrats, or even this country, our government, they want someone in office that they can control. Joe Biden, they can control him easily. So that's what they want. He can do all kinds of dirt. His family can do all kinds of dirt. And no one bats an eye. But Trump on every single thing, I've never seen a president, a former president, investigated in this way. But this is a whole nother topic. I'm sorry to rant about this for too long. But so let's get back into the video. My apologies. All right.
And Buck and Blair are like night and day or whatever all together. And conservatives were hyping her up because, oh, she should have debated Blair. And I agree because me and Buck were not a match for that particular debate because we just had two different experiences. And it was just like, yeah, you're not who I need to debate. And I am a firm believer as a debater, like, you got to have somebody that can kind of match your thing where you're going head to head. And that's when really good debating and good discussion happens.
I saw that debate. It was on Amala Kenobi, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. Amala Kenobi on her channel. That was a good debate, but I think, if anything, it would have been more interesting to see Blaire debate another trans woman, or maybe even have Buck debate Shane. That would have been interesting. But I do like Amala. I do subscribe to her channel. I don't agree with her on everything. It seems like both her and Candace Owens, some of the, how can I say it? Thing, I'm not against them being conservative. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, the conservatives are more logical than the liberals right now. The liberals, in my opinion, have gone too far left. But both her and Candace Owens, Amala and Candace, when it comes to racism, they're basically like, their mindset, and maybe they don't feel this way, but it's as though, racism doesn't exist. It's no longer affecting blacks in this country, so why even bring it up? And I know you can't blame racism on every single thing, but it's still alive and well. That's the foundation of this country. And with them, having their platforms, which are ginormous, they can't really speak on that issue in an more accurate way with someone who actually has a pulse on racism and who, how can I say it? Who has the freedom, the liberty to actually give an honest take on racism and that it is still prevalent. Otherwise, if they did, I don't think the conservatives would support them in the way that they do. But at the end of the day, most of what Amala and Candace advocate for, I'm with them on it. And I think they're both intelligent women. They're very well spoken. And for the most part, I like what they do. And I do subscribe to both of their channels. So, hi.
So what ended up happening was she had been wanting to debate me for a year. She started following me on Instagram,
Wait, she was
and
following you already on
she was
Instagram?
already following me on Instagram. So let's
Didn't
make
she
it
say
very
in the
clear.
debate she doesn't know who you are?
Yeah. Oh, I have mad
Okay,
receipts. I have mad receipts on
I
her.
remember that, right?
But
Didn't she say
yeah,
She
that?
said she didn't know who I
But she
was,
was
yeah,
following you on Instagram?
yeah. I have mad receipts on
Okay.
that.
but
And
she
so,
unblocked
Sorry,
me.
I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt.
no, no, no.
You can follow someone on Instagram and not even know it. You forget that you started following them. With the amount of people that we're following on these social media platforms, it's hard to keep track of everyone.
This trashy platform reached out to me and was just like, "Hey, there's someone that wants to debate you about trans issues." And I was just like, "Oh my god, is it Blaire White?" He was like, "Yeah, it's Blaire." And I was just like, "Okay, I'll come on and I will debate her." And so she didn't get back to him for about a week, and something told me to go look on the platform because I had learned my lesson with the last platform. I looked on that platform. They had some girl on there breaking her NDA over which celebrity she slept with. And I said,
Mhm.
my community is not going to come to this platform and watch a debate between me and Blaire. And so what I ended up doing was when that girl finally got back in touch with him, I told him, I said, listen, you can tell Blaire to get in my DM and we can find a more mutual platform and we can debate each other. I don't think this is the platform that my community will come to. And I have mad receipts on that. He was like, cool. Blaire never did. So almost a year later, I got a call from one of the producers wanting me to be a part of this episode or whatever. And when they told me what the name of it was, I was like, okay, Blaire is probably behind this because I didn't realize you can go and pitch episodes to them. And so what I am a firm believer is she went and she pitched that episode. And I think it was intentional on the casting because she's always said on her platform she dislikes trans activists and non-binary people. So
Mhm.
that's why you and I felt like we're so targeted as much.
I don't think Blaire said that she dislikes trans activists and non binary people. What she probably said was that the trans activists are out here making things more difficult for us and representing us in a terrible way. And with non binary people, I remember her saying that non binary and trans are not identical. And I do agree with her on that. But I don't recall her saying that she hates trans activists or people who are non binary. No. And the podcast that Blossom's referring to, some sleazy podcast, I think Blaire did mention that in her reaction to this episode of theirs. I think she did. And I think she denied it and said that that was not true. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Blossom says that she has proof, so what's her proof? The burden of proof is on the accuser, remember?
She's bullied other non-binary people
She
on her
bullied her own
platform.
side.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Some of those people that she's bullied, made videos of or whatever, were also my close friends.
Mhm.
And so it was a more personal thing on for me. And so getting there to set, like you, I was excited to debate Blair because I knew people that could not stand her. And I knew I would be speaking for a lot of folks that she's harmed. I knew I would be that representation for not just me as a Black trans woman, but for all the trans and non binary folks that she's harmed. Because
So who has Blaire harmed? Who has she bullied? I can't think of anyone. But I have seen activists harming the trans community. Maybe not physically, but socially, yes. But it sounds like they consider bullying and actually having logic to why you disagree with them.
she wanted to come on there and be disruptive. She wanted to be this boss or whatever. And I do think that to a certain degree, the Jubilee producers did play a part in it. Um, and you all were there during the taping of this. She did call me ugly. While we were filming, they did edit it out. And I'm actually glad they did. And I'll tell you why.
When Blossom says that Blaire was being combative, disruptive, and everything else, she's actually describing herself. Blossom was the one who was all of those things. And she even threatened Blaire. I heard it. Everyone heard it on the video. She said that she has bodyguards waiting for her outside. That sounds like a threat if you ask me. And she said that they edited the part out where Blossom called her ugly. Blaire said that she did not call her ugly. Alexander called Blaire disgusting, right? We all heard that right at the end. And he said that he shouldn't have called her that, but he was feeling that. That was what he was feeling at the time, so that's why he did it. Or said it, excuse me. The whole time they're going after Blaire, they aren't mentioning any of the other conservatives that debated them. Because why? Because they're all going after Blaire because she's the loudest voice. She's the threat to their agenda. And whoever isn't on board with their agenda is considered a bully, right?
Things got heated. I was like, yeah, keep it cute, keep it cute. She was like, yeah, you keep it cute because you're ugly. And in that moment, I got triggered. And I sat there because I've looked at this girl's platform and she has a racist following. A lot of her followers are racist.
It seems like it. Yeah.
They're very prejudiced, they're very racist, they're very transphobic. But the thing is, when you feel isolated from community, you're going to go to whoever's going to affirm you.
Mhm.
And so
Okay, so Blossom says that a lot of Blaire's followers, or her followers, people who follow her, are racist. I follow Blaire White. I'm not racist. And by definition, I cannot be. I can be bigoted, but by definition, I cannot be racist. I don't have power to control people or oppress anyone, so much for that. Not that I would want to either. I think it's wrong, but it's ridiculous. Just because someone is conservative or they don't agree with liberal talking points, they're not ultra liberal, doesn't automatically make them racist. Or being conservative is equal to being racist. When it comes to politics, both the Democrats and Republicans are racist, in my opinion. It's just a different kind of racism on each side. One side is typically more blatant about it, and the other is more subtle about it. She's saying that people who are racist follow Blaire. That's ridiculous. Just because they're not agreeing with her. Blossom, you're talking crazy. You were the main one, and you know it. You were the main one who was being combative and causing the most problems on that set that day. It was you. Not Blaire, but you. And the rest of the world saw that. The rest of the world, even people who are trans or LGBT, felt that the liberals were actually the ones who were in the wrong and were being bullies and had nothing to really back up their viewpoints because they didn't make sense. And the conservative side, they were more composed, they were more logical in their viewpoints and their debating style. But I would like to see more black conservative representation on those panels, even if they're not necessarily Republican, but their values and viewpoints do lean more conservative. That would be more interesting because when you see a black person who's LGBT, more often than not, it's always some person who is liberal on everything, who goes along with the liberal agenda.
Conservatives like to say about me is I'm angry, I'm upset, and because of my statue, they're trying to say I'm very threatening, and I'm not.
Mhm.
And so, we got back on set, we debated, and if you notice, I calmed her down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like because it's actually strategy, because debating is also strategy too. And so, I was like, Blaire, I don't have no problem with you, girl. Da 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 da, or whatever. And then, in the video, I set her up for the perfect blow up when I talked about how my blackness should not pay for your whiteness that's destroying my community. And it's so funny because all of a sudden, she's half white and she's half Latina. But all of a sudden, she wants to lean back into her Latina-ness, her being a Latina. She's half Mexican, she's half Portuguese or whatnot, to try to assimilate into a conversation with me about what I was saying. And the thing is, it's like, first of all, on her white side, when I specifically said whiteness, I'm talking about your white side. Let's not act like Portuguese people can't be racist to the Africans that come over there. And let's not
And
forget
they are.
Portuguese people in Portugal, they were colonizing folks. And what it is Blaire thought she was going to colonize me.
Okay, so Blossom, Blaire, I don't think Blaire thought that she was going to colonize you. And the fact that you said her whiteness or your blackness should not have to pay for her whiteness, that was one of the craziest things for you to say in that debate. I wouldn't have gone there in that setting. It wasn't necessary anyway. Yes, the Portuguese, I believe they were the first to enslave Africans. And even down in South America, in Brazil, Portuguese is the main language there spoken. They have a large black population down there, and I believe that there was just as much, if not more, slavery down in South America, even in Brazil during that area. And the Portuguese enslaved the blacks. And slavery was a horrible thing, yes. And I'm sure there are Portuguese out there who are racist, who don't like blacks for whatever reason. Even Hispanics, Latinas. There are, nice ones out there. But yes, there are a lot of bad apples. And there have been people from the Latino community who have spoken out online that, their community's racist against blacks. And what I find, and I'm not saying everyone is this way, but a lot of these groups who identify as being minorities or people of color who are non black, they typically identify with the dominant society. They identify as Caucasian on, applications or just to get benefits, even. And a lot of them have anti black sentiments. I'm not saying all of them do, but there are a lot of them out there who have those anti-black sentiments, and they just want to be as close to the dominant society as they can, which means having those anti-black sentiments. a lot of people are not aware of this, and they think that just because someone is non-white that they cannot, have those feelings. But truth be told, it does exist, unfortunately.
You need to work on your transition before you go to the bathroom.
Oof.
I mean, the level of just
Yep.
Audacity.
lack of empathy for other people's
It was stupid.
lives.
She was stupid.
It
It was just such a stupid comment. It
Yeah.
was really stupid because it's just like, why are we policing other people's transness? And they're trying to use, because I caught their strategy, like they're trying to use the gender binary of being a man and being a woman to be to be used against somebody that's non-binary.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I will say strategically, it was really interesting because like I had to when I debate, I have to take my feelings out of it or whatever, because we got to talk about the important issues. But they have a certain strategy where they sound very convincing in their talking points, but when you take their talking points and just try to dissect it, they're really stupid. They're not really connecting. But conservatives like that because conservatives only have a basic understanding of what trans people and non-binary people are. And that's why I made that talking point in the debate. It's like, and if you notice, none of them said anything when I said that.
Oh no, how dare Blaire White say that someone should work on their transition before they think about going into the women's bathroom? That's just terrible. Oh, come on. I agree with Blaire on that. If someone is early in their transition or not even making an effort, then they have the right to go into, let's use the women's bathroom in this case. The women's bathroom? I don't think so. I understand not everybody passes totally passes. And even me, I haven't had any surgeries yet or done anything like that just yet. And, a lot of people don't have those resources or access to those resources. And I'm only 5 years into my transition. I've been on hormones now for several years, for 5 years. And even that's considered a baby trans. I was at my doctor's office a couple months ago and she said, "Oh, you've been transitioning for 5 years." I said, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh, that's not that long." And I was like, "Really?" Because it seems like a long time to me. A lot has happened in the world in the last 5 years. Things have gotten really crazy. But to say that someone who is not making an effort working on their transition, to say that they're automatically allowed to go into certain spaces and not put forth the effort, well, that's not right. That's not fair. You should put forth the effort, the best effort that you can to allow yourself into those spaces and to not make other people feel uncomfortable. When I'm in those female spaces, I always do my best to make sure that everyone's comfortable, that I'm not making anyone feel uncomfortable. And I haven't so far, but to say that someone is allowed to go into those spaces and not work on their transition is wrong. And there's nothing wrong with calling someone out on that. Yes, I agree. Not just conservatives, but those who are not trans, who may not interact with trans people at all or see trans people out in the world, do have a certain perception of trans people, and a lot of those perceptions are based on what activists such as yourself, Blossom, are doing. And I'm not only referring to you, but a lot of them, that's their perception of trans people, what they're seeing the activists do, what they see crazy people online doing and talking about and indoctrinating kids. But Blaire is one of those voices who speaks out against that. We need people like Blaire to speak out against the indoctrination, grooming, because there is grooming going on. I'm not saying that everyone who isn't conservative is that way, no, but it does exist. And even advocating for kids to have surgeries, to mutilate themselves, or to start hormones before the age of 18. And people like Blaire are saying that no, not all of us feel this way. It's the activists and a lot of the liberals who are trying to force this ideology and medical transitions for kids on the greater population. And people see that and think that all trans people are that way. So we need more voices like Blaire out there speaking out against it. Okay, so this is the second half to my reaction to their podcast. It is rather long, and I couldn't finish it all in one recording, so I'm back to finish up. So let's get into it.
My safety was in jeopardy at one point because of her lying.
Yeah.
And I will say, because I have mad receipts, Blaire White lied and said that I threatened her on set. She went to her little low budget podcast, and I do mean low budget, like low budget in the dirt. It is a trash podcast, just like she is. And the thing is, and I humbly say, and I disrespectfully, humbly say it.
My podcast is low budget. You haven't seen anything yet if you think Blaire's podcast is low budget. And whatever happened to quality over quantity? You could have the biggest budget and still have a bad show if you're putting out misinformation or tearing down other people. And she said that Blaire threatened her, that Blaire was a bully to her. I didn't hear her threaten Blossom. However, I did hear Blossom threaten Blaire when she made the comment about bodyguards being outside. And I watched some of Blaire's video the other day, and she also mentioned that too, that bodyguards, they're there to do something physical, a physical job.
These conservative trolls come over to my page and accuse me of threatening her. And so here's the thing. She's very white adjacent. She's very in white proximity. Because I'm a black person and because racists are part of her platform as far as those that follow her, she didn't think about my safety. She didn't care about my safety. She didn't care about what these people could have done to me for her lies. This is why I appreciate Jubilee actually releasing the Patreon, because what happened was the director came into my room after the meditation. She walked up to me and she was just like, Blossom, I know it's biased. But we don't want Blaire to leave the set. And I actually had to check the director in her place. Then I said, let me tell you something. I've been on this set before. The last time I was here, I had a great time. Everyone treated me kindly. Everyone was sweet. Um, the conservative women, although we had different viewpoints, all got along. We all exchanged Instagram information.
Mm.
It was a vibe and a good time. And that's what I was expecting coming here. And it was so funny because they reached out to me to ask if I knew another trans man who would want to come on. And of course, I thought of you. And, because I've suggested another trans man to them before and it worked out or whatever, they trust me enough to bring people in to the platform. And I stood up and I told her, I said, I'm the only black person on this set and I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe because this girl is attacking me. Y'all typecast. Let's just be really clear. Y'all typecast for this episode because, again, she intentionally had a problem with non-binary people and trans activists. So I knew we were automatically going to be the target.
To say that is a bit extreme if you ask me. What she did question was that there was a non-binary person included in a trans debate, because non-binary is not trans. And if Blaire White has a problem with trans activists, I understand why she would, because it's the trans activists who are out there making other trans people look bad. And they're doing such extreme and crazy things, saying crazy things. A lot of people are just tired of it. They don't want to be forced to believe something or have things forced on their kids, gender ideology. So I can understand why someone would have a problem with trans activists. And I'm not saying that all trans activists are like this, but there are a lot of them out there who are. I don't consider myself a trans activist, but Blossom identifies herself as a trans activist. And I don't understand why she said that she didn't feel safe there as a black person. No one there threatened Blossom. And Blossom, she's the biggest one on that set. I heard that she's over 6 feet tall. So she has, I don't see why she would feel threatened. No one made any racist comments toward her or threatened her in any kind of way. So, Blossom, for you to say that you don't feel safe there, I can't understand that because no one said anything to you or did anything to you that would make you feel that way based on what I saw. I did not see the Patreon prompt. If anyone saw it, please let me know how did that turn out. I would love to know, but yeah, it sounds like she's trying to make herself out to be the victim, and typically that's what a lot of trans activists and a lot of trans people on the liberal side tend to do. Make themselves out to be the victims, even when they're the aggressors. And she said that she had no problem with other conservative trans women, or maybe they were just conservative, I don't know, but the reason why they're all coming at Blaire is because Blaire is well known. She has a large following, and she isn't saying what they want her to say. Now, if Blaire were liberal and she had the following that she does, they'd have no problem with her.
My sister Shar, I was passing her and she was like, Blossom, what's wrong? And, I had told her that Blaire had called me ugly. And she was just like, okay, you need to decompress. Like, you're holding a lot in. Just take care of yourself. And we had the closing reception later that night. So this is like in the evening. So I was like, I had a couple of hours to do so. So when I got back in my room, that's when I broke down and I started crying. I started crying because I had never felt so disrespected by somebody that was just so unprofessional and just somebody that is so despicable. I'll call Blaire White despicable. That's literally how I feel. And people can say, "Oh, you shouldn't call another trans person that da 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 da," or whatever. Let's start addressing racism in our community. Let's start addressing anti-blackness in our community. Let's start addressing the fact that some of our trans Latina sisters can be anti-black. Let's name it. Because if Blair is talking about her being half Latina, where are the trans Latinas showing up to um what's the word? Denounce her anti-blackness.
I do agree with Blossom. Yes, trans Latinas, some of them can be racist, I'm sure. But to say that Blaire is despicable and that she called you ugly, Blaire said that she did not call you ugly. I wasn't there on that set, so I don't know for sure, but when she said that, the look on Alex's face, on Alexander's face, it seemed like he was trying to recall when Blaire called her ugly. And Blaire even mentioned this too in her video. So I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. However, I do know that Blossom did threaten Blaire. That's on video. We all saw it.
She went to them because she knew Jubilee was the only balanced platform that I would go to where I would debate her. I wasn't going to come to another conservative podcast. And for Buck Angel, that little whatever, to be trolling me, to be racist towards me, because I got mad receipts. I got mad receipts with his little microaggressions about me being black, saying, oh, it must be sad to be black. He did say that, and I have mad receipts. So if they want to try something, let's go.
I saw that interview. And when Buck said that he was being sarcastic because Blossom was victimizing herself. I'm not denying that there is racism, there's white supremacy out there. Yes, I know, but I like Buck Angel, and I didn't see how he was racist towards her. It's been a while since I've seen that interview, but I don't recall. And had he been racist towards Blossom, I would have remembered that. But as far as I know, he was not racist towards Blossom. And once again, she's painting herself as the victim. And the Jubilee debate probably would not have received as much viewership as it did had it not been for Blossom and Blaire. They definitely made the debate more interesting. I will say that. But when Blossom came after Andrew and told him not to interrupt her, I saw where Blaire stood up for Andrew because Andrew didn't really have the same level of, how can I say it, personality to stand up to Blaire, or not Blaire, excuse me, to Blossom, who was being a bully. She bullied him also by saying that to him. And I'm glad that Blaire stood up to her because, Andrew was very intelligent. I believe he was the youngest person at that debate. And she took advantage of that. But luckily, Blaire was there to de-escalate the situation and put Blossom in her place. And she did exactly that.
Everyone's trying to define what a man and a woman is. To me, it's just an energy. You
Yeah.
either radiate masculine energy, you radiate feminine energy, or you
Yeah.
radiate both, or sometimes you radiate neither.
Yeah.
It's really just a spectrum there, and we're all humans at the end of the day. Again, I'm a trans guy, and I know what it's like to take testosterone and basically grow a small penis. So
Yeah.
I realized that women's bodies are very similar to men's bodies. And once I realized that, I was like, why are we fighting in this world? It doesn't really make sense that there's such a gender bias.
Yeah.
But again, I want to give you space
Yeah.
because it really hurt me to see, the non-binary community attacked in the way that it is. Because
Yeah.
me personally, again, I'm a binary trans person, but I don't see you any less a part of the community than I am, especially even in my pre-transition days. So please let
Yeah.
us know.
And we will not disrupt you, we promise.
Yes.
I promise. I'm here to give it to you.
Honestly, no, I really appreciate you both. And, maybe I'll start this with saying what the actual definition of transgender is, for, everybody out there who's listening. So to be transgender means that you fall outside of the gender binary. Non-binary people non-binary people fall outside of the gender binary. So therefore, non-binary people can indeed call themselves transgender because they are not within the gender.
Okay, I disagree with Alex on that because being transgender, you're still within that gender binary. And you're transitioning to the opposite gender that you were assigned at birth. Whereas with non binary, you're not transitioning to the opposite gender that you were assigned at birth. Therefore, you're not trans, but you are non binary. And there's a difference, and that's okay. Non binary people are just as valid as trans people. What Jubilee should do is have a non binary debate, maybe liberals versus conservatives. And I'm pretty sure they would have some difficulty casting that debate because I don't think there are many non binary people who are conservative. But I'm sure there are some out there. Somewhere.
You do not need to have transitioned in order to be transgender. A very important question or a very important point to make is pre-transition. If you're a transgender person, pre-transition, would you call yourself transgender? Still, are you still transgender? Yes, you are, because you are. If you are a transgender, you're a transgender pre-transition as well. So I just want to clarify that to everybody so everybody knows. But yes, one thing I also want to make sure is that people know that I speak from my own experience. This is my own non-binary, gender fluid experience. I've had my own journey. I'm still figuring out who I am every single day. Things change, things evolve. That's just part of being human. And also a really good part of being human is the ability to evolve. But it was very painful to kind of watch that back. And then just think about all of the other non-binary people who are watching it and thinking, and like maybe people who do relate with me and thinking like, damn, they're seeing me be attacked, and then like now they're kind of under attack as well. It's like it's this contagious thing. Like now they feel attacked. And so it's just painful to think about all of the other people who now feel a certain type of way after watching that. And maybe some of them feel empowered. Like I didn't want to, I didn't want to hold back what I was feeling in the moment. And when the show was presented to me, it was presented to me more of as a discussion versus a debate.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I was told you don't have to like debate necessarily. You can just, speak, tell your story essentially, like,
Mhm.
and then maybe you guys do find some middle ground. Great, cute. I'd seen like a couple of episodes before. I didn't want to bias myself too much. But the ones that I'd seen weren't too bad. Yes, there was like some little things here and there, but it wasn't too bad. So when I went on set, I was expecting a discussion, not a debate and
Mm.
an attack and to be interrupted.
Mhm.
I mean, it was every single time I spoke, I was interrupted. There
Mhm.
was maybe that's a lie. I think there was one time when I wasn't interrupted, but the entire time I was thinking, I'm gonna be interrupted. I'm gonna be interrupted,
Yeah.
which was distracting me. And I just, again, I couldn't get my points across. Like I felt just, there were a lot of unfinished thoughts because I was, again, being interrupted so often. But there's so many important things that I wanted to share with everybody about what it means to be non-binary, about my struggles, because there are so many shared struggles, and this has become now a podcast talking about how Blair was awful, at middle
I mean,
ground,
it
which
is
it
what it
kind of is what
is.
it is
You
because
know, we've got to address the elephant in the room,
she
and
was
that's what
being
I
most
wanted to
aggressive out of
mention.
the others. And to be quite honest, like the others, I feel like I was fine. Like
Yeah,
honestly, I would have had no
same.
problem had
I came to
Blair.
middle ground on some of them, and the thing that I saw, she even put out a video, I think before the video even came out, where she's like, "Come on, y'all, I can't do all the heavy lifting." It's like you're even hurting your own team when I just
Yeah.
don't get that. It just
Yeah.
seems like she's on an
And
island
then
by
somebody
herself.
No,
said,
it's so
"Awesome, I love you."
ridiculous.
And I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, like it's just we just have differences of opinion, but
Yeah.
that's okay." And you're
Yes.
absolutely right. Like they were that's what I debate on an every day. And I think with
Mhm.
Jubilee, when it comes to how they pick conservatives, they pick them more that are much more like moderate or much more open
Yeah.
Mhm.
to listen to the other side. That I will say they're very meticulous about that. They don't usually pick a lot of extremists like Blair.
Yes.
Blair is
That
an
was shocking.
extremist.
That was shocking. That
Yeah.
was
The
a
energy on
shocking.
the set, I gotta tell you, I'm sure that there's folks that caught that where I was just, like, breathing and I looked,
Mhm.
viscerally upset. I didn't wanna look her in the eyes because the energy that she was radiating was just horrific,
That's
honestly.
funny because
It
I
was
wanted to
really
look
her
her in the eyes.
I didn't want to. I didn't wanna, like, even give that any energy because it's so sad feeling. Like, when I was sitting next to her, there was this sadness that I felt, almost as if, like, it's like this person that's not getting chosen by one community, so they're
Yeah.
running to another, and they're locking themselves in a room to perform for a community that ultimately hates them, so that's gotta be a hard life to live. In some weird way, I hate to say it, and I know you don't quite agree, Blossom, but I still feel some sorrow for her that she
Mm.
has to
Mhm.
live that way because I can see how she may have gotten to where she has and being isolated from communities in some ways.
Now they're trying to say that they feel sorry for Blair because she's has been shunned from the conservative side. First they say she's extreme, which I don't think she's extreme. The way they're setting it up to go out saying that they feel sorry for her, that there's something wrong with her, that she's trying to gain acceptance from the conservative side who does not like her. But there are a lot of conservative people who will actually engage with Blair because they know that Blair makes sense and that she is a good representative of trans people. That she's one of the better representatives because she isn't out here doing extreme stuff. And you see the liberals out there doing the extreme stuff, those who are. So I don't know. They're just trying to go after Blair and make her look bad. And they want everyone to jump on their bandwagon because they're trans. Blair does not have anything against non binary people. All she was saying was that non binary is not the same as being trans. And that having a non binary person included in a trans debate doesn't make sense because non binary is not trans. I can't hate Blair for that. Had I been on that panel, I wouldn't have said anything, but that thought would have crossed my mind for sure.
we were such a representation of our community that can't take Blair and that can't take Buck. And the only thing I kept getting from trans conservatives is to a certain degree, and this is where I may have middle ground sympathy for them, is they feel left out because they think the reason why they're not a part of the trans community or whatever is because of their political views. And that's not really the case. It's much more about the bigotry,
Yeah,
the
Mhm.
racism, the
exactly.
isms, and all of the things. And so
Misogyny,
the
all of it.
misogyny,
Yep.
all of those things. And so it's just like, well, how do we heal from here? But this is my thing. Because past this podcast, I don't think I'm gonna talk too. I don't think I'm gonna name drop Blair White too much more. Because
Same.
number one, she's not gonna get all my peace and my energy. But I also want us to begin to address the systemic racism and anti-blackness within the trans community.
Mhm.
But I thought it was really, really important to say these things or whatever because I speak for so many people. I really do. And I was powerful, but for you as a non-binary person to take up space, and this is what I need you to understand, that was really powerful because, and it was really powerful for the non-binary community to see us walk. Well, what did we do? Did we stay back on a prompt or walk up to a prompt about non-binary people? I can't.
I
I
can't
have to go back and look at the
remember.
video,
I
but it was
believe we
it was the
walked up. Yeah.
yeah, we walked up to a prompt on saying, oh, that the non-binary community should be included in the trans community. And we all walked up, the four liberals. And don't you know how refreshing? Somebody commented and said, thank y'all for walking up.
So, as someone who has a lot of conservative values, as I mentioned before, I am not conservative on everything, and I do not identify as a Republican or a Democrat. But I feel shunned in many ways from the trans space. And there was a time when I was afraid to actually express how I really feel about some issues. Like, I don't support abortion. I think it's wrong morally in most cases. I know that there are exceptions, but the majority of them happen because people are irresponsible. I won't get into that right now, but it seems like, especially being black too, as a black person, I have to be liberal and that the conservatives are racist. But the truth is, there's racism on both sides. You have to ask yourself, where do your personal values align? Maybe some of them might be conservative, some of them might be liberal. And that's okay. That's finding middle ground. But to say, oh no, you're a conservative, I can't agree with you. You're a liberal, oh no, I can't agree with you. You're automatically wrong, even if what you're saying is correct. And it's mainly the liberals that have that mindset.
Feel free to reach out to me. Send me a DM. Let me know. My email address is in my thing too. Y'all can email me. Be old school. Um, but also, maybe put yourself out there and like meet other people who are non-binary and maybe learn about their experiences. And maybe you just won't be so scared of them. um, anyway, I said a lot, but like honestly, I just feel like there was so much that I didn't get to say um because of the situation that we were put into. Um, but yeah, I hope that I hope that people I hope that this will actually get people to look more into what it actually means to be non-binary. I hope this planted the seed. Because the thing is, once you plant that seed, you can't unplant it. It's there.
That's
I
true.
do this all the time. I
That's
do this
true.
all the time with my own family. My family's a little bit more conservative. They're good people that they're more conservative, but they're good people, but they're conservative in their own points. They're old school, they're immigrants. Very bizarre.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And so I always plant seeds with them. I'm always like, "But mom, don't you think that that sounded a little racist?" And then she's
Good.
like, I don't care. I will call anybody racist. If they're being racist, that's disgusting. Don't be racist.
Mm.
It's that simple. If it's a microaggression, I'm like, "Mom, you know what a microaggression is? Let me teach you." This is our responsibility, right, as human beings in this world too, to teach other people, to help them evolve, especially the ones that we're really close to, like our parents that are old school or whatever, or our cousins or whatever. There's still opportunity for you to teach them too.
So, what Alex just said, I think Jubilee should look into having, even if it isn't a debate, but having an episode for those people who identify as being non binary. That would be interesting. And I'm sure there are people who are non binary who do not consider themselves trans. Maybe they could debate on that. That would be interesting also. And there's nothing wrong with being old school on some things. But as human beings, yes, we're supposed to evolve as time goes along. But I feel like a lot of what has happened over the last, say, 5 to 10 years has caused us to regress. And sometimes things just become too liberal and too relaxed that you have to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, where does it stop? Because I think we've crossed that line so many times just over the last few years. And it's okay to have order, to be conservative, and to hold fast to old fashioned values. I'm not saying that all old fashioned values are good or bad, but a lot of those old fashioned values actually worked. There was more order, people were happy, people were more productive, and people took care of each other and looked out for one another more. But now it's more individualistic or political. Like being trans or being non binary should not be something that's political. But in recent years, we've made it political. And it doesn't have to be. They're saying, oh, well, there are a lot of anti trans laws being passed. I hear that a lot, but I haven't heard of any anti trans laws or bills that are against adults who are transgender. Based from what I've heard, those laws are actually against kids transitioning. And I don't think kids should medically transition or be taught gender ideology in school or LGBT ideology in school. There's no need for it. I heard that there are bills that are against that, but bills that are actually against trans people, if there are some out there, and I'm talking about trans people, adults included, please let me know what they are. Don't just say that there are anti trans bills trying to take away transgender people's rights. What are those rights exactly? What are those bills? I would like to know. And if the activists, if they keep up what they're doing, what they've been doing lately, yeah, there are going to be laws and bills that are against us. Why? Because you went out there and chose to misrepresent us and force your ideology on other people, even though you're the minority. But you want people to basically accept your point of view and have no regard for their values or for their points of views.
I did call Blair disgusting. I know that. I shouldn't actually have called her disgusting. But did I feel it at that moment? Yes. Was she being disgusting at that moment? Yes. Should I have called her disgusting? Probably not. It wasn't my best look. Honestly, that entire podcast wasn't really my best look. Was I being my best? No. Why? Because I was put into a situation in a boiler room, just like we all were. We were put into a boiler room with these prompts that these directors knew were going to be extremely controversial. I signed up for it, so I'm going to stand by what I said. I said what I said. I stand by it. I'm not going to blame it on the edit. I said what I said. But there's context in things. So I really want to make sure that people understand why I came across the way I did, the history from Blair and myself, and also why I refused to answer what I am dysphoric about because it's nobody's damn business.
I don't think Alex Sanders should have called Blair disgusting. I don't think either of them are disgusting. It's just that she said that he was non binary, yes, which he is, and that non binary and trans are different. That's what they were disagreeing on. And it sounds like Alex had a problem with that. He took that as a personal attack on him. And I don't think that's a personal attack on him. It was just her stating that non binary individuals should not be included in the trans debate because they're not transgender. That's how I took it. So, to wrap things up, this episode of the Transparency podcast was mainly an attack on Blair. They didn't really mention any of the other conservatives on the panel. Why? Because they were going after Blaire because she's the loudest voice there, meaning her following is large and more people tune into what she has to say. And they see her as more of a threat than anyone else who was there that was conservative. Also, I'd like to thank all of you for supporting my last reaction video that I did on the Middle Ground episode. Thank you. I had no idea that that reaction video would be seen by so many people. Over 8,000. And I know for some of you that doesn't seem like a lot of views, but for someone like me with such a small following, that is a big deal. So thank you to all of you who tuned in and commented. And I do ask that you please comment, like, share this video. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. I know this episode has been out for a while and I was recovering from foot surgery, so it took a while for me to actually get things together to make this reaction video. And thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all of the support. So let me know, what are some topics that you would like me to talk about, to discuss? I would love to know because oftentimes I feel like I have nothing that's really interesting enough to make a video of. So I won't make another video until I feel like I have something that's interesting enough to talk about. So if you have an idea, if you have a topic for me to discuss, please send it my way. Thank you for all of the support. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.